other women decided that we needed to do something with all that's happening in the country, that we needed to do something here in Hanson. Hanson's a quiet town. There are things here I think that people just don't talk about in terms of racism and bias, and we felt that it was time that we brought it to people's attention and that we gave people the platform to continue having conversations and to be able to know that there are other people that they can talk to about the racism in Hanson and how it's affected them, how it's affected their children, and how do we move forward. Past couple of weeks have just been horrendous. It's just every day it's gotten to the point where I don't want to watch TV, I don't want to look on Facebook, because it's just one more thing on top. And I think when I saw the video of Mr. Floyd, that was it. That was a straw that broke the camel's back. I just can't do it anymore. I have to do something. I went back and forth debating whether or not I wanted to speak, and I wanted to tell people the things I had experienced growing up here in Hanson, but I didn't feel that I needed to bring up the things that happened to me were well in the past. I didn't want it to seem as if the people that are here now would allow that to happen, but I will make sure that people know what happened to me when I went to school in Hanson, a couple of incidents, and that the remembering that was all triggered by me watching that video. It just triggered thoughts, things that I had thought about for a long time, and different things that had happened to me. And it just brought up a couple of really bad memories around school. I didn't want people, again, to think that was now, but I know that there are other people that have kids in the system now, and their kids aren't being treated any better than I was 50 years ago. These are a lot of people I'd never seen before, don't know, will know them now. We'll continue to have conversations with them, and in the future possibly plan more events where we can get together and share information so that we can educate each other. This event was meant to start a conversation. It's a conversation that we want to continue. I want people to ask me questions. I want to be able to answer their questions and tell them from my perspective what I think has happened and what happens here in Hanson. I think Hanson's a nice, quiet town, but it's not any different from any other town, and you have the same issues. And maybe I could educate them so they can see the implicit bias and the things that happens. I've begun to look at information and resources, and considering talking to the library about setting something up so that people can educate themselves and know where the resources are so that they can better understand what happens and why.
Though many of the laws are no longer in place, the legacies of those laws are still with us. Redlining in real estate segregated communities, highways cut through cities decimated communities and increased pollution and the health outcomes. Black people today are dying of COVID at twice the rate of whites, and that is one of the legacies of racism, of systemic racism. All of these regrettable mistakes help to explain the inequities and injustice for Black people and for people of color in this country today. This must stop.
That's right.
Yes.
Right, that's right.
Black Lives Matter!
Yes, Black
It
Lives
should.
Matter!
Can't just say it.
So, you know, we often hear the refrain of all lives matter. Of course it's true that all lives matter. Every life matters. But right now, and throughout the history of the country, there's evidence time and again that Black lives have not mattered. As a white person, I'm not at risk the way Black lives are at risk. As a white person, I'm less likely to get stopped, to be a victim of discrimination or violence. I'm more likely to get a mortgage, get a job, get a good education. Until we can remedy these inequities, the institutional racism and mistreatment of Black people in this country, we need to get and stay behind the Black Lives Matter movement.
Woo!
Way to go, Marianne!
So I'd also like to address that this event is not anti-police. We certainly are against police brutality and racism, but we want to live in a community where every person is safe, is fully accepted, and we want to push back against any structures, policies, or biases that keep that from happening. We want a country where things are fair, and facing racism is necessary to achieve that kind of future. So let's prepare that kind of future by modeling right here in Hanson and the surrounding towns what a local community does when faced with a great challenge and a terrible truth. It means coming together and having challenging conversations, calling and demanding action from our elected officials, supporting legislation proposed by the Black and Latino caucus at the State House, patronizing Black businesses, getting resources to mental health issues, and it means speaking out when we see injustice. That's not always easy to do, but it's time. It's silence is violence. Yes.
Silence is violence!
And it means increasing voter enrollment and voting. If you haven't registered to vote, there's a tri-board somewhere. Oh, over there. You can take a picture of the information for registering to vote. You can do it online. So, finally, it means listening to one another and working together. This will be a long haul, but it has already begun to change how we think about these issues. Yesterday they talked about removing Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben from their packaging, which is another remnant and legacy of racism. So we want this movement to continue and conversations and actions to take place. As a first step, we've created a Facebook page called Hanson United Against Racism on Facebook. There's a Twitter page called Hanson United, or Twitter, is that it, Angela?
Feed.
At Hanson United. And for people who want to continue the conversation, there's a private conversation on the Facebook page. So please join us. We'd like this just to be the beginning. And our silence is unacceptable, but our collective power is unstoppable. So I'd love to hear people say, yes, we will.
Yes, we will. Yes, we will. Yes, we will.
So thank you all. Your presence here is very appreciated. And I'd like to introduce Chief of Police Mix for a few words. And I'm going to spray.
Some nice conversations with Arlene and Mary Ann. I realized, you know, I do have something to at least get out to everybody that's here, in that the Hanson Police will work with you. We want to hear you. If we're doing something you don't like or you think is wrong, please tell us. If we don't discuss it, all we're going to have is conflict, and we're never going to solve anything. It's very important that you give us feedback and vice versa. And I think if everybody could just take a little bit of time and listen, I think we can get a lot further in this country. On a side note, I have yet to meet a police officer that agrees in any way with what happened in Minneapolis to Mr. Floyd. That is not the way any of us in this state have been trained, or for that matter, I think the only way I can look at that is a lack of humanity. I can't correct what happens 1,000 miles away. I can correct what happens in 17 square miles here, though. So again, please, the Hanson Police, we welcome anything that you have to say. We'd love to have discussions with you. And again, thank you for allowing me to be here and listen tonight.
And to dismantle the racial biases that we live with every day. I want to first thank the Hanson Police for supporting our event, and all of you who may have been compelled by your own experiences or knowledge that you had to be an ally. That word is important to me because as a woman of color and having biracial children, I'm so grateful that many of you are willing to stand for me, maybe with me, and or by me. The word ally means united in resource for mutual benefit. Many of you I do not know, so although we cannot say we are friends, I know that we are bound together to achieve a mutual benefit, and that is to have a community that is welcoming, inclusive, and safe. Thank you for being here and wanting to do this difficult work with us. We can be proud as a community to tout all the things that we have living in this small quiet town, but we also recognize that not everyone's experience has been the same or even pleasant at times. Today, I want you to think about the implicit bias we have about racism. This is not a blame game, but a recognition that we may have deep-rooted systems that have perpetrated our unconscious and, sadly for some, very conscious behavior towards people of color. This behavior for so many of us is second nature that we don't even think about it. Last summer I saw a post about a black individual who was selling energy in the neighborhood. He was in my neighborhood and people were stating things like, call the police. Meanwhile, that man had an appropriate permit to do what he was doing. People went so far as to suggest to grab their children, run into their house, and lock their doors. I didn't see too many people making the suggestion of asking the man personally if he had a permit or what he was doing. I immediately wondered what would happen to my child who was of darker complexion. Would you all run inside your house if my grown son, who is darker, happens to be knocking on your door? Why do people of color come with this bias that precedes their character? You have to immediately assume suspicion and almost be surprised that they're good, decent human beings. Many of you may not experience something like this, so it's often hard to understand the feelings of shock and sadness. You feel for a moment that you're not quite right, that you may be lacking something. But then, when you come to your logic, you become indignant and angry. Let me share as a mother an experience of my second grader had. This was one of many, but this one brought me to tears. He was the only boy given the nickname of Chimp as he was playing in the playground. It bothered him because he didn't know why he was given a nickname or if it was just name calling. He sensed that it was inappropriate and was confused about it. When he told me, I hit the roof. My mind immediately understood the undertones of that, and these young children were aware of its implications. I spoke to the teacher and sent a message to the principal. I was told they would handle it privately. I felt that more had to be done with this, and this was an opportunity to learn from. We needed to point out and call the elephant in the room. But then I was told that we should move on. I complied because I wasn't sure just how comfortable I was rocking the boat. Who wants to talk about these difficult things? And maybe that's why we're here today. We miss so many opportunities. Let time just bury the hurts we've compiled, but then we owe it to return these moments of the white elephant in the room. We don't address diversity here, the lack or the need for. We just chalk it up to let's move on and let's not rock the boat. I'm asking you today to not move on and rock that damn boat. Maybe the boat we're in needs to be better. Maybe we can do this better. Let's figure out a way we can break those old ideas and behaviors down so we don't lead biases that allow for some people to make horrible, demeaning comments, to uncomfortably sit in silence when someone behaves in a racist way because you don't want to be the confrontational person. Today I ask you to be an ally. You don't have to say the right thing or fix the hurt, but your presence and your acknowledgement that we need to do better because some of us aren't getting the same treatment speaks volumes. We get all lives matter because all men are created equal, right? But I ask you, have we truly realized that, or is that something you need to say to yourself to make you feel better? It's been said that the first step to any recovery is to get yourself out of denial. That may be the hardest thing we need to go through before we can come to a place of healing. But let's start today. Join us and don't be complicit. Tell your neighbors and your kids that you are willing to have those difficult conversations because we know we can do better. Let's do better, Hanson. Black Lives Matter. Thank you, allies.
Black Lives Matter!
Black Lives Matter!
Black Lives Matter!
Thank you. Thank you very much, Becca. And I'd like to introduce Ayala Roister, who will speak next. Ooh, you want this right?
Hello, everyone. I wrote this, and it's very personal. So if I become emotional, I ask that you just bear with me. On July 4th, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was signed. It stated, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." After that document was signed, Black Americans would continue to be enslaved for another 90 years. The Declaration of Independence was not signed with the idea or intentions of providing enslaved Black Americans with the same freedoms that it so desperately wanted for itself. Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, freeing all Black Americans enslaved in the southern states. However, all enslaved individuals were not given this message. It wasn't until 2 years later, on June 19, 1865, that the last enslaved Black Americans in Texas were read the proclamation by Major General Gordon Granger. This is why the date of June 19th is one of the most important days to Black Americans, even though its significance has been largely hidden away. I cannot speak for every Black American, but to me, Juneteenth is not an ordinary holiday celebration, because each Black American who attends has a different story that connects them to the event. For me, my story starts with my grandfather, Carnell Stanford. My grandfather was born in 1914 on the Menifee Plantation in Covington, Tennessee. He was raised by his grandparents, Slayton and Saluda, who were former enslaved Black Americans. Even though at some point my great-great-grandparents were freed, they were unable to leave the plantation due to not having any assets of their own. No land, no money, or a place to go. Their only option was to ask their former captors to allow them to continue to work on the plantation in exchange for a place to live. History books will go on to call them sharecroppers, but my great-great-grandparents became so indebted to their former captors that they worked on the plantation until the day that they died. My grandfather left the plantation at the age of 25 after being drafted into World War II. After fighting in the war and returning to the States, my grandfather decided to move to Chicago to find work. There, he found work and my grandmother. After living and raising most of their children in Chicago, my grandparents decided to relocate to a small town in Alabama called Hanson City. Hanson City is the second oldest all-Black community in the United States and the first all-Black community in the state of Alabama. Our population is less than 1,000 residents. Hanson City is a town that was created out of racism and the overwhelming desire to exclude Black Americans from being a part of the city of Oxford. There was little doubt that the town would be successful. However, the founders, former enslaved individuals themselves, did something really amazing. They built a school and taught grades K through 12, developed businesses, and became a safe place for all Black Americans to visit during the Jim Crow era while passing through the state of Alabama. As a child, Juneteenth was my favorite holiday because it was a weekend-long celebration. We purchased new outfits, we went to salons, we made meet-up plans with our friends, and we could barely sleep the night before. There is where we would learn about Black success. There, we were able to see that our story and contributions to America did not begin and end with slavery, but instead, we adapted and we grew like the livingstone plant, determined to grow in harsh conditions. I learned of Garrett A. Morgan, who invented the traffic light, Daniel H. Williams, who performed one of the first open heart surgeries, Matthew A. Henson, an explorer, who was the first Black American to go to the North Pole, the Tuskegee Airmen, who were Caribbean and Black American military pilots who fought in World War II, and Madam C.J. Walker, the first female self-made millionaire. We learned about poets and writers, singers, musicians, inventors, and activists. We learned about the evolution of our music and how it birthed so many of the genres of music that we hear today. We watched in awe as the dancers performed tribal-influenced pieces, imagining it to be the beauty of our unknown people. We were mesmerized by stepping, which is when the body becomes a drum. The drums connect us in a spiritual and emotional way to the land that we come from. Our celebration was full of great food and entertainment, education, love, and joy. And there in that space, we could be free and unapologetically Black. When I celebrate Juneteenth, I am celebrating all of those enslaved individuals who never believed freedom could be achieved. When I celebrate Juneteenth, I'm celebrating all the strange fruit that has been strung from the trees. When I celebrate Juneteenth, I'm celebrating the creation of Hanson City, the place of my birth. When I celebrate Juneteenth, I'm celebrating my great-great-grandparents who were enslaved even while free. When I celebrate Juneteenth, I'm celebrating all of my grandfather's dreams that he had for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayala, very much. Next, I'd like to introduce Erin Slayton, a 2014 graduate of Whitman Hanson. Erin.
Would you like to start?
All right. Can everybody hear me? Good? Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Erin Slayton. I'm 23 years old. I am a high school English teacher, a master's student, and an artist. I have lived in Hanson since I was 2 years old. I am biracial, a mix of African American and Irish, black and white. The story I've come prepared to share today is not one centered around trauma. In a minute, I will be reading an original poem that I thought I wrote for myself. Life has shown me I wrote it for you all to hear tonight. I like to believe there are lessons in all things. The universal law of relativity states that each person will receive a series of challenges for the purpose of strengthening the light within. My lived experiences with racism reveal nuances of my identity. I live my truth and acknowledge my privilege, knowing full well colorism is but another layer to these societal constructions. It is all relative. The beauty of the Black experience is how vastly diverse it is, the lack of one singular truth. The beauty of the Black diaspora stems from its refusal to shrink to any one mold, bucking stereotypes, rewriting narratives. My experiences with individual racism have taken the shape of ugly words, like "you're not Black enough," or "you talk like you're white," have shape-shifted into unprompted hair touching, racial profiling. I am both Black and white, never one or the other. That is intersectionality, and never the two shall divide. My experiences with systemic racism have taken on a shape harder to define, the thin veil of whiteness ever draping over my life. There has always been a knowing of otherness, of erasure, of silence between the lines and lies of history. I find purpose in unpacking my experiences with racism to propel my voice and speak out to educate for change, the kind of change which always starts at home, in the community. So, without further ado, I'd like to finish by sharing a personal poem I wrote this year, which muses on who I am and the spaces I occupy as I continue to grow into all that understanding. It is titled, "Intersectionality is Too Clunky Inside a Poem." Take instead a verbal sketch. Contrast meets fusion, a union of brewed coffee and cream. I've given much thought to what I carry around, this body mostly, morphs out of boxes, bends outside of lines, thick and clearly drawn like parking spaces. I miss the cue of tacit understanding, twist against the strong arm to conform. Mess, muddle, one drop to taint the blood. Black and white make gray paint no matter how you mix it. My fourth grade mind to gape and grapple how white and black make brown. An acrostic name poem. Aggression, resonance, intuition, N for Negro. Drawing a yellowed self-portrait, waxy crayon clumps blend layers on white printer paper. Hear me convince you the colors are different from here. Try my tongue on mestizo, negro, blanco, maroon, but not grease, not pallid drain, bloodletting the sky of blue, not slate, not drab, not black or white, but hands you trust with soil, trained roots taking hold, however a mess of spindly systems. Nourish, sink, ebb to flow, a middle brown, earthen and wetted. Thank you.
Now I'm going to read a list of names.
Timothy Thomas. If you guys could please repeat the names after us, it's a part of the Say Their Name vigil. Timothy Thomas. Timothy Thomas.
Danroy Henry.
Trayvon Martin.
Eric Garner.
Tamir Rice.
Michael Brown.
Artego Damon Howard.
Jeremy Lett.
Laval Hall.
Thomas Allen.
Charlie Lundu Ken Lang.
Naschalus Vincent.
Tony Robinson.
Anthony Hill.
Bobby Gross.
Brendan Jones.
Eric Harris.
Walter Scott.
Frank Shepard.
William Chapman.
David Felix.
Brendan Glenn.
Chris Jackson.
Spencer McCain.
Victor Emmanuel LaRosa.
Salvado Ellsworth.
Darius Stewart.
Albert Joseph Davies.
Samuel DeBoss.
Christian Taylor.
Assam Sparrow Manley.
Felix Kumi.
India Kager.
Keith Harrison McLeod.
Junior Prosper.
Anthony Ashwood.
Benny Lee Tignor.
Jamar Clark.
Nathaniel Harris Pickett.
Miguel Espinel.
Michael Noel.
Kevin Matthews.
Betty Jones.
Antroni Scott.
David Joseph.
Deshaun Perkins.
Kaylin Rockamore.
Philandro Castillo.
Christopher J. Davis.
Peter Gaines.
Jessica Nelson Williams.
Michael Eugene Wilson.
Vernal Bing.
Antoine Shumpert.
Davaris Kane Rogers.
Delvin Hollins.
Donnell Thompson.
Livonia Riggins.
Therese Kircher.
Alfredo Alongo.
Christopher Sowell.
Andrew DePease.
J.R. Williams.
Darren Barnhill.
Nana Adamako.
Cad Robinson.
Raynard Burton.
Eltira Woods.
Rico Devontae Holden.
Mark Brandon Davis.
David Jones.
Aaron Bailey.
Dejan Gilroy.
Charles David Robinson.
Anthony Antonio Ford.
DuBois Lister.
Calvin Tony.
Lawrence Hawkins.
Keita O'Neill.
Juan Pedro Pierre.
Arthur McAfee.
Ronell Foster.
Mario Bass.
Shermichael Issa.
Cameron Hall.
Stephon Clark.
Danny Thomas.
Warren Marquis Jones.
Marcus David Peters.
Tony Green.
Rashawn Washington.
James Leatherwood.
Charles Roundtree.
Danny Washington.
My phone is replaying the video from earlier, I'm sorry. Gregory Griffin.
Isaiah Lewis.
Ryan Twaman.
Joseph Richardson.
Ataga Jefferson.
Michael Dean.
William Howard Green.
Donnie Sanders.
Breonna Taylor.
Deshaun Reel.
Tony McDad.
David Acme.
George Floyd.
Rayshard Brooks.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Those are just some of the names. We're now going to do a moment of silence. That was 8 minutes and 46 seconds.
So thank you all. I think everyone knows the 8 minutes and 46 seconds is the time of the video with George Floyd, and with all those names and how long that took just really sinks in. So we have an opportunity for Speak Out. There are a couple of people who were interested in coming up. Is Damari here? Okay, and no. So Angela's going to speak. There's a student, but if other people, we have a few minutes. If there are people that like to come up for a minute or two and share an experience, please come on up to the stage. Experience is, and it can be from anyone in this audience about what your experience. Please come up. And I could introduce Representative Josh Cutler, who's here. Thank you for your support, Josh.
I'm trying to see where my son is and my family. But, my name is Angela Johnson, and my family and I just moved to Hanson a year ago. And one of the considerations that we had when we moved here was that my youngest son, Daniel, is a black child. We were called in July of 2016 and told that there was this beautiful, beautiful African-American baby sitting at the hospital, and did we want to be the parents who get to adopt him? And my husband and I, thrilled as we were at the idea of bringing this beautiful child home, this was about 2 weeks after Philando Castile was murdered. And after everything that had happened, with all the names that we read up to that point. And I know my husband and I looked at each other, and for a moment we really questioned whether we could do it. Because I'm old enough to remember when I heard white privilege and it made me super mad. And I couldn't understand what people were talking about. And having over many years of reading and learning and observing, having to challenge my own white privilege, that it's never once occurred to me when I got pulled over by a police officer that they might shoot me. It's never once occurred to me that someone was following me in a store. It's never once occurred to me that I couldn't ask for the manager. Thank you, Karen. So my husband and I, who are both Caucasian adults, are now raising a black child. And when we moved to this community, we wondered, because it's not a very diverse community compared to where we came from, which was Quincy. But looking at all of you today, I just want to say how grateful I am, and I'm so glad that my son will grow up in a community of people who are willing to challenge themselves, who are willing to state that his life matters, that his name shouldn't ever be on any list like the one we just read. And I think if all of us walk away from here and continue to do the work to challenge ourselves, that this is going to be a moment in time that's really going to change everything. And I'm proud and happy to be part of this community. Thank you so much.
Is there anyone else who would like to come up and say a few words? We encourage anyone with any experience to join us. We welcome your voice. It's very important to hear what you have to say.
My name is Cheryl Nolan, and I pretty much grew up in Hanson. Of course, when I became a teenager, I was getting out of this one-horse town because I didn't want to be here anymore because it's too country, it's too slow. And as soon as I had children, I hightailed it back to Hanson, and I have been living here for the past 25 years. My children I raised here. We have faced plenty of backwards comments, supposed to be compliments, but you know that they're not. I've watched people who, let's put it like this, when I first started dating my husband 44 years ago, every time he came down, he would get pulled over, that boy from Dorchester. We stuck it out, raised our children here. We have faced name calling. My girls were very active in the community because we're not going anywhere. We are here. We're here to stay. We're proud of who we are. Our families have been here. I had a mother at a cheerleading, one of the games, got upset, told us to go back to where we came from. I said, honey, I've been here for 50 years. What? Go back to where? You're an implant. You've been here for what, 4 years? You want to tell me to go somewhere? This is my home. And I will fight for it to continue to be my home. And I thank all of you who are out here today. It saddens me that there are not more. But I thank each and every one of you for coming out and standing up for what's right. Because racism is wrong. We have been fighting it for years and years and years, and it's got to stop. And it's sad that it took a young man's life for everybody to start realizing that this is a reality. It is happening here. It happens in our communities. Silence is violence. Don't turn a blind eye. When you see something, say something.
Silence is violence!
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to come up? We have a few more minutes. And I know the young woman who was going to speak from the high school was working, so looks like she may not have been able to get here yet. But anyone else like to speak? I encourage you to consider. It's really important to hear your voices. If you're thinking about it, you take that one step. We support you.
I'll come up and say something.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I want to thank everybody for taking the time out of their day to come here. I'm going to fix this thing once and for all. I am an artist. I work on the stages or in and around Boston. I'm also a professor at the Bridgewater State University for the theater department. I have worked with several very talented humans on many stages in this area, and they all seem to have one clear message that they want you to hear. Each one different, just as we're all different. So I want to encourage everybody to start thinking about what you're going to view in terms of movies, art, photography, art exhibits, holiday music, just everything. Take a look at what you're being exposed to, and then make a choice of what you want to be exposed to. I have sat in music festival after music festival, jazz band after jazz band, wind symphony orchestras, and I look at the content in their programs. I started doing this a few years ago. First it was I was looking for women. Are we putting on composers that are women? Are we representing women fairly? And then that's when my friends started pointing out to me about their culture missing as well. And I started seeing that real hardcore too. So I'm very passionate. I don't necessarily have my own message to share with you. That's not why I'm here. That's not why I came up to the microphone. I want you to go out and find the message that's being put out there by people of color, by indigenous people, dancers, playwrights, because they're putting that message out there and they're using their talents peacefully to tell you what they want you to hear. So I just hope you give them all that chance and work them into, if you're teachers, work them into your curriculum, work them into your arts programs. Thank you, that's all.
I think we have time for one more person. I'll ask one more time for Damari. Darn. Okay, would anyone else like to come up and speak? Someone who's coming up? Becca, you want to go up now? While she's coming up, we have an announcement.
Hi everyone. We have an information table over there where there's a newsletter sign-up sheet that you can sign up for any future rallies in the South Shore area. I also have packets with petitions you can sign, black local businesses you can support, movies, books, TV shows you can watch or read to educate yourself, stuff like that. So if you want to come up and grab a packet just for education-wise, go right ahead. Thank you.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? I wasn't going to do this, but I've lived in Hanson almost 50 years now, about 46 years. Came here from Dorchester like a lot of people in Hanson, and it's a wonderful town. The reason I want to say something is because we see signs that talk about silence and how silence is complicit, silence is violence, and at the very least, it's complicit. And so I want to ask you, people like me who are white, that sometimes you have to have the courage to break away from that silence and push back. And the reason I'm saying this is because we know social media and what it does to people, but I recently had an experience on social media, and I just want to say, I'm Irish. I'm Irish through and through. I'm first generation Irish. My parents were both born in Ireland. And just the other day, a woman posted something on Facebook that said the Irish were slaves in the United States. And that is not true. And if you ever see anything like that, know that I am angry when I see something like that. Yes, the Irish had it tough. I'm not going to diminish that. The famine, they came to this country, they weren't welcome. We've all heard the expression, Irish need not apply. But they were not slaves. Right. They were not slaves in the United States, and they were not slaves in any other country. That's right. They did. There were Irish who became indentured servants. They made a contract. Was it horrible? It was terrible? Yes. But they made a contract to work their way, and when they finished their period of indenture, they came to the United States. But I repeat, please, if silence is implicit, then please do something about it. I don't want everybody getting into a war on social media, but once in a while, you need to push back, because this woman was someone I am friends with on social media. So please, and as the daughter of Irish immigrants, please don't let anyone tell you that there is anything that happened in this country that is the moral equivalent of slavery. Right. Thank you.
Thank you all for speaking today, for being here. I think we all have direction, and you know, they keep on looking out at a big sign that says silence is violence, and I know I've been silent at times, and I feel like this is a ledge that we're over, and no more silence. So if we can have a cheer for silence is violence, it's time for that to be over. So you take a picture. It's violence. Silence is violence. Silence is violence.
Silence is violence. Silence is violence.
Thank you. So we're just going to wrap up a couple of reminders. We're going to be marching around the building. Arlene will be leading that with some of the group that has been doing some of the cheers, and taking a moment at the end to hold up our signs for people to see. But thank you all for coming. Please think about the things that you can do, the outrage that you have. A lot of what goes on here, it makes us feel numb. It's like one after the other and you're not sure what to do with it, but just notice how horrible and outrageous what racism has done to our friends, family, our country. And you know, I think it just, I believe in all of you, I believe in myself, and we can make this change. It's way, way, way overdue. And remember to sign up to vote and all the other things you can do, and sign up for we want to continue conversations and take action from today. So please sign up for the Hanson United Against Racism page. And thank you very much. So on to Arlene. Thank you, all of you. You want to say something about what you're going to do? How do you want to organize it? I don't know.
We're going to start a line headed this way, and it's important that you keep your social distance. We'll walk around the building, come back around this way, and then just line the sidewalk out front with our signs and wave.
Thank you.
LaValle. I'm a student at Bridgewater State and a recent graduate from Whitman Hanson in 2019. I'm out here at Hanson Town Hall. We just finished up a rally. This is, I think we're starting a group in the South Shore with my friends and other people that want to join. So this is our 4th rally in the South Shore. And as white people, we need to get the word out and use our privilege. So that's what we're doing. We're using our privilege to get the word out and protect people of color. Thank you.
I was really glad to see the amount of people that came out to support us in our Unity Walk today. Hanson Against Racism. People told stories. We talked about what's happened here in the country and how that has pushed people forward to become engaged and to engage in what's happening and no longer being able to say they don't understand or they don't see what's happening in this country. We read a list of names that took 7 minutes to read, and that wasn't a complete list of all the people since 2010 that have been affected. Our hope is that people will continue the conversation after this. We've set up a Facebook page and a Twitter account. We set up a private page so that people can come and speak openly and freely about the issues that they're having or ask for help or just be able to speak to someone else that may not know what they're going through. I was very, very happy with the younger people that came to support us. And I'm glad it turned out the way it did, and I think it was a good beginning for Hanson.